As soon as they gave me the anesthesia, I could feel my eyes close and everything just went black, completely dark. And it felt like a second later, I woke up and I was standing in the most beautiful building I had ever seen.
Welcome, John. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Laura. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show. I always enjoy sharing my experience. So thank you so much for the invitation.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. Now, before we get into sharing your story, would you go over a little bit about your background, what life was
Sure.
like, and what brought you into the near-death experience, and then
Sure.
what you experienced on the
Absolutely.
other side?
Yeah, absolutely. My story started when I was 21. That's when my experience started. But my background is the complete opposite of what I learned from my NDE. My sister and I, we were raised Catholic, and my dad was very Catholic. He would take us to church sometimes two or three times during the week in the evenings, and then also on Sundays. So I grew up with the theology of Catholicism. And I remember as a kid, I remember thinking that, is there really a place like hell where we're sent to? Are we going to be punished when we come to the end of our life? Why would God send anybody to hell if God is supposed to love us? So I grew up, I was always really confused about religion and what we were supposed to believe in and why. And then when I had my NDE, everything changed for me. All of the stuff that I learned that I thought was true, I realized that it wasn't true, that there really is no hell. God really does love us. And it literally changed my entire life from being focused on religion to being focused on spirituality. And that's what I've been teaching now for all these years since my experience happened back in 1987.
Beautiful. Now, when you say teaching, are you teaching near-death experience? What is it that you're teaching?
Yeah, what I do is I simply talk to people all over the country and across the world about my experience and just share what I learned and share that there really is no death. Nobody
Mhm.
ever really dies. We just go home. We just go back to the place that we came from. And my whole message really is to just help people to not be afraid of dying. It's the number one fear of humanity is the fear of death. And I think my experience, just like all of the others who have NDE experiences, I look at mine as just a piece of the jigsaw puzzle. I'm just one piece, and we're all trying to put this big puzzle piece together.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I've had a near-death experience. So I know I've had mine, and then I know I've had a lot of guests on who also had near-death experience, and there all seems to be like similar hallmarks of it, like the love, the void,
yeah,
things like that, the light. And but then there's also a little bit of extra, and I think that attributes to each individual's maybe perspective, experience, or what that person needs. So there is a little bit of a difference between them. And I know you have a lot of recall on yours, a lot of memory of being on the other side, whereas somebody may not have that much depth and
yeah.
understanding that you've brought back with you. So would you be able to take us into your near-death experience and
Sure.
share that
Yeah.
information?
Yeah. I'll tell you how the whole thing started. And my story really begins with my dad. My dad was in sales his whole career. And one year he won a sales contest. And part of what he won were these mopeds, what we would call scooters today. And we used to ride these things all over the neighborhood every day. Well, one day I was out riding and I had an accident. And the way that I landed, I tore the tendons off my right hand and I needed to go in to have surgery for them. Well, I was only 21 and I had never had surgery before. I don't think I had ever even spent much time in a hospital. So I didn't know what to expect or what was going to happen. So my mom drives me down to this clinic and they start to take me into the operating room and they start to prep you like they do before surgery. And then when they went to give me the anesthesia, I had some kind of horrible reaction to the anesthesia and it stopped my heart. And that's how my whole story starts from that day. And something I want to tell your listeners too, to kind of give them a little bit of a backstory as to why my experience is so unique and so different. A lot of times when we hear about people's NDE experiences, something happens, like they're having surgery, like I was, and they die, or there's some kind of an accident and they die. And all of a sudden they pop out of their bodies and they start moving down this tunnel. And at the end of the tunnel, there's a white light, but they're often met by somebody, either a relative, a family member, a friend, a parent, someone who tells them it's not your time. You have to go back. So we never knew what happens on the other side of that light. What is that light? Well, what they did with me, my whole story starts on the other side of that white light. So here's what happened. As soon as they gave me the anesthesia, I could feel my eyes close and everything just went black, completely dark. And it felt like a second later, I woke up and I was standing in the most beautiful building I had ever seen. It was beautiful white marble. It was so long, it was such a long building that I could not see the end of it. I looked over to my right, and there were all of these marble columns, probably 20 or 30 feet high, about 6 feet apart, going all the way down as far as you could see. In the center of this building where I was, there were all these tables about the size of a person's average kitchen table, but they were all white marble, again, going all the way down as far as you could see, about 6 feet apart. Well, right then, in my left ear, I hear, "My name is Alan. I'm your spirit guide." Well, back in 1987, there was no talk about spirit guides. There was no terms about a near death experience or an NDE. So I had nothing to reference this with. But apparently all of us have a spirit guide. That person helps us plan our life, and then that person is with us for our entire lifetime. So what happened is, on this journey that Alan took me on, everything he showed me, he was telling me in my ear what I was seeing. And he told me that the building that I was standing in, that beautiful white marble building, is called the Orientation Center. So I look over to my left, and this was the most extraordinary part about this building. On the left hand side was this huge marble wall that could have gone for miles. And it looked like it was cut out of solid marble, were these doorways. They were tunnels. And when you looked in the tunnel, it was like looking into space. Well, Alan told me that when we finish a lifetime here on Earth, when we go into the tunnel, the white light that everyone sees at the end of the tunnel, that's the entrance into the building that I was standing in, called the Orientation Center. Every one of these tables that I could see, there were two people sitting at every single table. And Alan told me they're called orientation counselors. And their entire job is to greet people who just finished a life and help them remember where they came from. So Alan said, he told me to look at the next tunnel. So I look up at the next tunnel, and there's a man coming through. He was an elderly gentleman, maybe in his 80s or 90s. He'd lived a long life, and he was doing this. He had his right hand over his chest like he had chest pain. And Alan told me that he just passed from a heart attack. So the woman that was sitting closest to this tunnel, one of the orientation counselors, she stood up. She walked over to him. She took his hands in hers, and she led him back to the table. And they sat down across from each other. And she held his hands the entire time. Well, she started talking to him, but I was too far away. I couldn't hear what she was saying to him. But my guide Alan said that the reason that these orientation counselors are there is because most of us, we don't know in our lifetime, when we come into a life, we don't remember where we're from. We don't remember that we're from the other side, we're from heaven or the afterlife, and that we come into a lifetime on a place like Earth just to learn, to grow, and it's just temporary. And so when people die, oftentimes they're really afraid of what's going to happen. And that's what these orientation counselors do is help people remember where they're from. So Alan told me, he said, watch this gentleman. So as I'm watching him and I'm watching this orientation counselor talk to him, the most incredible thing started to happen. This elderly gentleman began to change, and he changed all the way down into a man in his early 30s. And Alan told me on the other side, that's how God created all of us. We're all in our 30s. So, right in front of my eyes, as this man began to remember everything about the other side, where he's from, that he just finished a lifetime, he changed into a man in his 30s. So, he finishes the conversation with her. He stands up, he walks off to the right, he walks down between these columns. He goes down 3 steps into what I call the gardens. I don't know if that's what the other side calls this, but it looked like beautiful gardens, manicured, beautiful gardens. And there were all these people there. And Alan told me that after you have the orientation, when you meet with the orientation counselor, the next thing that happens is we all have a reunion. And what that means is that all the people that were there waiting for this gentleman, they were people that he knew in his lifetime who had passed before him. Parents, siblings, friends, everybody that he had known were all waiting for him when he got back. And Alan told me, he said, the reunion is a really big deal for people that come to a lifetime on Earth. And he said the reason was because there are so many, many souls who don't want to come to Earth because it is so hard here. It's a very difficult place to be. So when we finish a life, it's a really big deal. All those people are there to greet us when we get back. And something else, Laura, that I learned that was just such a neat thing to know is not only do people have souls, so they all transition to the other side, but so do our animals. All of our animals also make the transition. So when you get back, not only do we see all the people we knew, but we also get to be reunited with our animals again. And then what happened is Alan started to take me on this wonderful journey of these different places on the other side. And I don't know exactly where I was or what it was called, but wherever he took me, it was really busy. That's when I learned that when people pass over, when they cross, they don't just sit around all day. They're actually really busy. Everybody's busy over there. So what he did is he took me to these different buildings first so I could tell people what they looked like. And then we went to the inside and he told me what these buildings were for. So the first place he takes me to is this gigantic, enormous building. It was rectangular and it was made of white marble. And all along the perimeter of this building were white, gigantic marble columns. This building was so large that we don't have anything like that size here on Earth. So we go on the inside, and he takes me into a room that is a round room. It's perfectly round, and it looked like a round movie theater. And I looked up, and there were all these movie screens all around me in a big circle. There must have been 20 of these movie screens. And my guide Alan said, "This is the life review." And all of a sudden, every one of these screens started playing a movie. It was like being inside of a theater, but the movie was about me. Each screen, I was looking at a different age that I was in my lifetime. One screen showed me as a little toddler, another one showed me as an infant, another one showed me going to my first day of kindergarten. And what was so fascinating is that Alan told me the life review is the greatest teacher of the soul. One of the screens that I was watching was something that I totally forgot anything about when I was a kid. This one screen had me in, it was either second or third grade, and we were at recess. And we had a child, another student in our class named Toby, and he had something wrong with his legs. He couldn't walk without crutches. Well, we were out playing at recess one day, and he fell. Toby fell, and I ran up to him. I helped pick him up, put his crutches back on, and went about my day like just like any other kid would have done. I never thought anything about that. But when I was watching that screen of him falling and me helping him, I could feel how my actions made him feel. And he was so appreciative that I actually stopped to help him. So that teaches us the good things that we did. On the other end of that, we also experience anything that we did that hurt somebody else. And I don't mean like the kind of hurt if you have to end a relationship because it's not working out. The kind of learning I mean is from any kind of pain that you intentionally caused somebody else. If you murdered somebody or committed a crime against someone, you also have to feel how your actions made that person feel. And Alan explained to me that's why it's called the greatest teacher of the soul. Because if that person doesn't learn that it's not okay to hurt other people, if they don't learn that in their lifetime, they learn that in the life review. And there's no sense of any judgment, there's no sense of any kind of persecution. There's nobody actually judges you. You're actually in that room with yourself and your guide reviewing your lifetime, what they call life review. So then we leave that building. He takes me to another building. He shows me the outside. This one was also gigantic, huge rectangular building, white marble columns. And we go to the inside, and he walks me into a room that looked like what we would call today as a modern movie theater. It had a big screen up front. And he told me, Alan said, I want to show you 3 lifetimes. And I didn't know what he meant because as a Catholic, there was never any talk in their theology about the possibility of other lifetimes. It wasn't part of their doctrine. So he said, I want to show you 3 past lifetimes. All the lights go off, and the movie screen lights up, and it's a gentleman with a shaved head in a red robe or a red gown in a monastery. And Alan said that was you in a past life. And what you did in that lifetime, you taught kids, young boys, how to be monks in a monastery. And that life happened somewhere in Southeast Asia. And then that screen disappeared. And Alan said, I want to show you a second lifetime. So the screen lights up. And again, it's me. I don't look like I do now, but I knew that this was me. And I had a wheelbarrow, a wooden wheelbarrow, and I was pushing it along this cobblestone road or cobblestone street. And what I was doing is I was pushing all of these shoes that were stacked up in this wheelbarrow. And Alan told me that in that lifetime, you fixed people's shoes. So once they were fixed, I would put them back in this wheelbarrow and I would push it back to the people who lived in the village. And he told me that life happened somewhere in Eastern Europe. And then that one disappeared. And then he said to me, I want to show you a third past lifetime. The screen lights up again. Again, it's me, but I'm standing in a wooden boat. And I'm either on a lake or on the ocean. I don't know which one. And I was doing this. I was pulling in these fishing nets, hand over fist, hand over hand into the boat. And part of my job in that life was a fisherman to help feed the village. And then that life disappeared. And I think Alan must have known that this was going to be really confusing for me because I'd never heard of past lifetimes before. And he told me, he said, all of us have been around since creation. Billions of years, we've always existed and we will always exist because the soul never dies. And he told me that God set up this ability for us to come into a lifetime to experience, to learn, and to grow because he gave all of us the love of learning. All of us love to learn, and we can leave the other side to come to a place like Earth. And I remember after my NDE, I remember thinking, why would anybody want to leave a place like the other side that is full of love, hope, joy, kindness, compassion, and a beautiful, perfect world? Why would they leave that and come to a place like Earth when there is war, there is suffering, there's pain, there's homelessness, there's poverty? All those things exist here. Well, the reason we come to a place like Earth is because we learn the best when we have to go through something difficult. It's the challenges that teach us who we are and make us who we are. And he explained to me that every individual soul can choose to leave the other side whenever they want to come into a lifetime. Nobody tells us we have to. There's no requirements. There's nothing that says you have to come into a lifetime. There are some people who like to come in more frequently and other people who don't come as often. It just depends what they want to learn. So that's what I called the past life building. I don't know if that's what they call it, but I was able to see that past lifetimes really are real. Well, the next building he takes me to, this one was different than the other ones he had showed me. This one was a gigantic, round, beautiful building. It had a big dome on top, and it had columns all around the circumference of this circle, this beautiful white marble building. And Alan told me that this is where we go when we plan a lifetime. So we go on the inside, and the first thing I notice, he walks me up to a marble table, this beautiful white marble table. And there was nothing on this table except for one item, and it was a scroll. It looked like a scroll from like ancient Egypt. It was written on papyrus paper. It looked like that, and it had a blue ribbon around it. So I picked up the scroll, I took off the ribbon, and I did this. I rolled it, I unrolled it on the table. And Alan told me all of our lifetimes are actually planned before we come in. And I never asked him, well, why do we go to this building? What's the reason? I never thought to ask that. But apparently we all go to this building and we take these papyrus charts, these papyrus paper, and we write down all the things we want to accomplish in that lifetime. And we write things like, what country are we going to be born into? What language are we going to learn? Are we going to go to university? What kind of careers are we going to pursue? Are we going to get married? Are we going to have kids? What is the whole life going to be about? And it's kind of like what a lot of us do at the end of every year when we do New Year's resolutions. We write, I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to exercise. I want to stop smoking. We plan everything ahead of time. And then when we finish that lifetime, we come back to that building and we get our scroll and we look and see how we did. So I tried to read my scroll and it did this. It folded up and I wasn't able to read it. And I think the reason was because if I did, I might have somehow messed up an experience I was supposed to have. So I wasn't able to read it. He just told me that we all have these charts, these life charts, because no one's life is an accident. We're all here for a specific reason. So, right about then, I looked to my right and I could see this gigantic long wall, and it was full of scrolls, just like the one I was looking at. And Alan told me that everybody on Earth back in 1987 when this happened, had a corresponding scroll on the wall, but they hadn't finished their life yet. So the scrolls were still there. So I looked to my left. On the left hand side of this building was this huge, enormous window. And when I looked out the window, there was a path outside this building. And this was the first time that I actually saw other people. And wherever it was that Alan took me on the other side, it was really busy because this walkway had people walking back and forth. And it was the first time I saw that people, they look just like we do. When God created us, we all have different characteristics. Just like we all have our own personalities over there, just like we do here on earth, everyone has their own unique look on the other side also. And people were really busy. It was like if you were to go to, like you, for example, like if you went to Miami, like a big city in Florida at lunchtime, and
Mhm.
all these people are walking around, that's what it looked like. People were busy, active, going different places. Well, on the other side of that walkway, there was the most beautiful lake I have ever seen. It was this round lake, beautiful round lake. The water was so still, it looked like glass. Well, all around this lake were all these big weeping willow trees. You know how those trees come over like this and their branches come down?
Yep.
On the surface of the lake, all the leaves were floating on the surface of the lake. It was absolutely breathtaking. And Alan told me, he said, all the things you like to do here on earth are also on the other side. And people do all kinds of things. Everyone's busy over there. Take classes, go listen to music festivals, they go to lectures, they go to libraries and read. They like to visit with other people. They might play sports, go swimming, hike, all the different things that go on over there. So when a person finishes their lifetime, they just pick up where they left off and continue with their existence just on the other side. So that was the building. Oh, I forgot. I want to mention one more thing. Before we left that building with the big dome on top, he takes me to an area that all I can describe it is a gigantic library with tall bookshelves. But what's interesting is all the books look the same. Do you remember when you were a kid looking at Encyclopedia Britannicas?
Yep.
That's what these looked like. Every single book looked like an Encyclopedia Britannica, and they were all the same color. They were kind of purplish or kind of maroon color, and they all had gold lettering on the binding, but the lettering didn't go horizontally, it went vertically up and down. So he walks me up to this one book and he shows me that the book is named Nina, Nina. And Alan told me, he said, everybody has a soulmate. And he explained to me that what that meant was that when God created all of us, we all have a soulmate who was with us for all of eternity. And we all have one. And what these books are, what these Encyclopedia Britannicas are, is they contain everything about that soul. In other words, the books contain all the lifetimes that this soul has had. It talks about everything that the soul has learned through all their lifetimes. And it also talks about the gifts that they were given at creation, because God gave all of us gifts. We all have gifts from God at creation. And I didn't even know what a soulmate was because back in 1987, there was no talk about soulmates. And I wish that I could have asked Alan, do soulmates come into a lifetime with us? Because I have had so many people ask me, well, when am I going to meet my soulmate? I've never found that love of my life. And the only thing I can say is that not everybody comes into a lifetime to experience that kind of a relationship. They don't always come here to have children, to have families. A lot of people come here to work on a skill, or they come here to work on a profession. And it doesn't matter. Everybody has a different reason for being here. And I've talked to so many people that have told me that they felt like failures because they didn't meet the right person, or they didn't have kids, or they didn't do all these things that society makes us think are important. But that's not how the other side works. It doesn't matter if you didn't find the right person, or if you thought you didn't have kids and you were supposed to. It only matters what you came to experience. And it doesn't mean you're a failure. Everyone just has a different path. So that was the building that I called the past life building, and it was beautiful. For the next place he took me to, this was by far my favorite part of my whole NDE. He again took me to another building. It looked like a stadium, like what we would go to see a football game or a soccer game. It looked like that. But instead of it being made of white marble, it looked like it was stainless steel. This absolutely beautiful stainless steel building. So he takes me to the inside, and the first thing I notice, there were thousands of seats all inside this building, and all the lights were on. It was really bright. And Alan told me, he said, this is a planetarium. And did you, Laura, ever take like field trips when you were a kid to go to a planetarium?
Yep.
I did too. And a planetarium, just for your listeners, is one of those places you can go to where they can show images of galaxies and stars and planets, things like that. Well, that's where Alan took me to, was a planetarium. Well, there was a gentleman right behind me who ran the planetarium. He was a person that we would call like a professor of astronomy. He knew everything about astronomy, planets, stars, galaxies, suns, and he ran this planetarium. And he said to me, let's begin. All of a sudden, all the lights go off and it's pitch black. So I sat down and I looked up at the ceiling. And he said to me, when you look at the stars, this is what you see. And what he was referring to was everybody on Earth back in 1987, when they go out at night and look up at the stars, this is what they know to be there. And all of a sudden, our sun showed up, our star, and then all the planets in our solar system, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, all the planets in our solar system. And then it disappeared. And then he said, when we look at the stars, this is what we see. And he was talking about everybody on the other side at their level of development. This is what they see when they look up at the stars. And all of a sudden, planet after planet after planet started showing up. First, there were dozens, then hundreds, then thousands and millions of other planets. And he said to me, there is far more life in the universe than you can possibly imagine. And I think there were two reasons why Alan showed me this. And I think the first one was because he wanted me to tell people that Earth is not the only inhabited planet, that there are virtually unlimited other worlds in the universe. And the second reason I think he wanted to show me this was to tell me that Earth is not the only place where we can have lifetimes. There are virtually endless other worlds that we can have lifetimes on, and that Earth is only one of them. Well, after this part of my NDE, I started to get really interested in astronomy. And I want to share something with you and with your audience that might kind of give you some perspective about how large and how gigantic he was telling me about the universe. So now that we have all the data from the Hubble telescope and the James Webb telescope, now those space telescopes, they believe now, astronomers believe, that our galaxy, just the Milky Way alone, has 100 billion planets in it. and that's just our galaxy. And they believe now that there are over 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. Well, if every galaxy is the same size as the Milky Way, and if each one of them has 100 billion planets, can you imagine how many planets there are in the universe? And one of my favorite people when I was growing up was Carl Sagan. You might remember his name. He was an astronomer. He was a professor at Cornell, and he also started a show back in the early 80s that was called Cosmos. And he was the first one to say that there are more planets in the universe than there are grains of sand on planet Earth. And
That's cool. That's a
I
cool
mean,
analogy. Yeah.
yes. Can you imagine if you go to a beach, like you probably have been at the beach in Florida,
Yeah.
if you just go down and pick up a handful of sand, there must be tens of thousands of sand, of little bits of sand in your hand. And he said more planets than all the beaches on Earth. That's just astronomical, absolutely astronomical. So the universe is gigantic. We can't even begin to imagine how many worlds there are. So that was my favorite part. That was the planetarium. So the next place he takes me to, this next building, it was the largest building he had showed me so far. It was beautiful white marble. It was so long that literally it would take days of walking to try to get to the end of this building. And the sides, they didn't have columns. There were no columns on the sides. They only had columns in the front. And it looked like that building looked like our Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. It had all the columns in the front, like 10, 12 columns in the front, and all these steps leading up to it. So we walk in, and I realized it's a library. And they had big, tall wooden bookshelves with books as far down as you could see. And there were people everywhere. Some people were studying at tables, other people were looking for books, other people were visiting. And Alan told me, he said, anything you've ever wanted to learn is inside this library. So then he walks me over to the left hand side of this library. And on the left hand side were all these study rooms. And the rooms looked just like what we would go to a library today to reserve a study room. They were about as big as a person's maybe average living room, something like that. So he walks me up to this one room, and there's a woman sitting there. She had jet black hair, straight black hair down to her waist. She was wearing kind of a purplish maroon kind of a gown or a toga of some kind. And she had her back to me, and she was watching what I thought was a movie screen. And this is something that's really interesting that I've never understood even all these years later. My experience happened back in 1987. This whole thing happened in 1987. Well, back then, the TVs that we had, the television sets we had back then, were those huge, big, monstrous boxes that
Mhm.
weighed like a couple hundred pounds. You couldn't mount those on a wall, they would just fall off and break. Well, what this woman was watching, she was watching something that we hadn't invented yet. It was a 60 or 70-inch plasma flat screen television set mounted on the wall. I remember thinking, what in the world is that? Because we had nothing like that yet. Well, my guide Alan said, watch what she's looking at. So I got closer, and I could see that she was watching a battle that had taken place between Native American Indians on horseback and the United States cavalry on horseback. And there was this big battle going on. And I thought she was watching a movie, because what else would it have been? She's just watching a movie. And Alan said to me, she is watching living history of a battle that took place 200 years ago here on Earth. And I was so indignant. I said, that's impossible. We didn't have video cameras back then. How in the world could she be watching history? And Alan said, everything gets recorded. And to this day, I still don't understand how that's possible, but it's a God thing. Somehow our entire lives, everything in history gets recorded. So if you're on the other side and you wanted to go learn about Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, or you wanted to learn about Abraham Lincoln or Mother Teresa, you could go watch their lifetimes in these libraries. And you could also watch any particular episode of Earth's history. You could watch World War II. You could literally watch anything in history. And I thought that was extraordinary because I've always liked history. And it was just wonderful to know that if you want to learn something on the other side, you can go and watch it or read about it from that perspective. So that was fantastic. And that's what I call the library building. The next place he takes me to is this huge, gigantic castle. And it was made of stone, just like castles were made back in England and in France. This beautiful stone made castle. And Alan said, let's go in. So we go on the inside, and the first thing that I notice is this sprawling red plush carpeting. And it made you feel like you were royalty. And that was the whole idea, was to help you feel like what people felt in medieval Europe during that time period. So we walk in, and I noticed that this is another gigantic building. It wasn't as long as the library, but it was big. And on both sides of the walls, there were life-size paintings, and there were life-size paintings of people who had lived in medieval Europe during that time period. So, like for example, King George, there was Queen Anne, all the people that had lived in those castles during that time period. You could see what they looked like, life size or pictures of what they looked like. And they also had them wearing what people wore back then, the kind of clothing. And on every single there was a podium on about 2 or 3 feet from the wall of each one of these paintings. And the podium had a book on top of it. And Alan told me, he said, this book is about everything about that person's lifetime is in that book. So if you wanted to read about King William or King George, you could come to the library, you could see what they looked like, and you could go to the podium and read about their entire life in this book. Well, something catches my eye, and I look to my right, and there was a woman who was coming down a stairwell. You remember how in castles back then they had those round stairwells like this?
Yep.
She was walking down this stairwell, and she had hair just about as long as yours. It was strawberry blonde, and she was wearing, I guess, what we would call a peach, like peach colored, kind of orange, kind of yellowish, kind of a gown. And she was walking right up to me, and I thought she was going to say, "You're not supposed to be here. You have to leave. You're not supposed to be in this place." So I was just waiting for that. Well, she walked up to me and she said, "Is there anything I can help you find?" And Laura, I said the stupidest thing to her. I don't even know why I said this, but I said, "No thanks. I'm just looking." Just like you say when you go to a clothing store or you're going to buy shoes. That's what everyone says. No, I'm just looking. So I didn't know what to say to her. Well, my guide Alan said that on the other side, she loves everything about medieval history. So if you're on the other side and you wanted to learn about this particular period of Earth's history, you could go see the castle, the kind of things that they lived in. You could look at the paintings on the wall to see what they looked like. You could read about them in the book, or you could simply ask this woman anything about medieval Europe and history. And Alan told me that on the other side, we all do the things that we love to do. and they revolve around all the gifts that we were given by God. And it's very different than our experience here on earth, because here on earth, we all have to work to get money to pay bills. Bills are something that we have for our entire lifetime. But on the other side, we don't have to worry about those things. We do the things that we love to do just because we love to do them. And this girl loved everything about medieval history. So that was what I called the castle. And this is the very end now of my whole NDE. Alan takes me to this meadow, and it was the most beautiful meadow I have ever seen. I've seen nothing like that here on earth. The sun was out. It was a beautiful, clear day, not a cloud in the sky. And all these rolling hills, green rolling hills with wildflowers. And then Alan left. He left me standing in this meadow. And I thought that I was there by myself. So I turned around to look at the rest of the meadow. And right in front of me, Jesus was standing there. The person that we know as Jesus was standing right in front of me. He was wearing a white robe, and he had a golden sash, kind of like a really beautiful belt around his waist. And he had these gold colored sandals that laced up his calves. But when I went to look at him, that's when I noticed that there was something very different about him. Everybody that I saw during my NDE, they looked just like you and I. Everyone has their own look, just exactly as God created them. But when I looked at Jesus's face, there was all of this. It looked like this, like lightning was coming out of his face. There was so much light that I couldn't see what he looked like. But he spoke to me and he said, "You must tell them there is no death." In the very next instant, like this, I woke back up in that operating room. And ever since then, I have always just tried to share my story with as many people as I could. And my whole message really is to try to let people know that the happiest day they will ever have in their lifetime is going to be their last day, because that's the day they get to go back home. And ever since then, I've just tried to share my story. And it was interesting too about how he said that to me. He didn't say, "You know what, John, when you're not busy, when it's convenient for you, when you have some free time, would you mind sharing what we showed you?" He didn't say that. He said, "You must tell them there is no death." And all these years, I've tried to do exactly what they told me to do. And Laura, that's my whole NDE in a nutshell.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. That's a lot of detail. I had a near-death experience. I don't have that much detail, but part of my near-death experience, kind of like you said, the scroll wrote up and you
Yeah,
weren't able to see it. So I only came back with certain information because I still had some life left that I
yeah.
had to unfold. But they said as I went on, I would get things through my channeling and understanding and downloads. Now,
Oh,
did
wow.
all your memory come back all at once, immediately, or did it unfold for you?
No, it actually, I had memory of the whole incident right from the very beginning. And what's really interesting is I usually have a really bad memory. Like I couldn't even tell you what I ate for dinner last night. But I think God gave me the ability to remember every single detail of what Alan showed me, just for the purpose of being able to tell other people what it's like over there. And I've never forgotten anything about it. I remember it like it happened yesterday.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, how long did it take you to recover and start talking about it? Because like it's a big transition from that space to this space. And I know a lot of people are affected by it. They go
Yeah.
into depression, they they don't want to be here. I know I go into these bouts about, I
Yeah.
don't want to be here from time to time.
Yep.
And it's kind of like this ebb and flow of these spaces. And then there's times where, yeah, I want to be here, but then it's like the thought of being on the other side comes back in and it's like, I don't want to be here.
Oh,
And I'm
I
ready to
know.
go back home. But how is it for you?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the depression because that's exactly what happened to me. I didn't know what exactly had happened. So my mom was driving me back home from the clinic, and I was telling her what happened. And my mom was very spiritual. And the only book that was out on the market back then was the book by Raymond Moody called Life After Life. And my mom gave me that book. And I read the book that very day or that whole night. And I realized, oh my gosh, I was in what people call heaven, the other side. They just call it home. But I had this extraordinary experience that was real. And I went through a horrible, horrible depression when I realized what had happened. It lasted at least 2 months. And I'm in the kind of depression where I didn't even get out of bed. I didn't accomplish anything during those 2 months. I just wanted to be back. I didn't want to come back here. I wanted to stay over there. And I actually thought about maybe I should commit suicide in order to go back. And the only thing that helped me was when I thought back to what Jesus said to me that day. You must tell them there is no death. And when I started to understand that and what I was supposed to do with my life, I slowly got out of that depression. But just like you, I think about it all the time. And it's really sometimes really difficult to not want to be back there. Because what everybody misses the most is when you're on the other side, we can all feel God. We can all feel how much He loves and cherishes us. It's this tangible feeling. Well, when you come to Earth, Earth is the exact opposite. It feels like you're in a battle and you're in a foxhole without a radio and you feel cut off. Life here feels like boot camp. There are some really tough times all of us go through. And that's why I had the hardest time trying to understand why would anybody leave the other side to come here? Why would anybody do that? And I learned that it's because of what we become fighting through all the things we go through. Because what we take with us is all the intangibles. We don't take any money, cars, properties. We don't take any stuff with us. We just take what we learned and who we became. And
Mhm.
that's what's important to the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. And as my journey has unfolded, I've learned a lot. And a lot of that I've realized has been what my soul, or I don't want to say my Laura self because on the other side, this is just an identity.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, my soul took on a lot.
Yeah.
And through that, a lot of spiritual awakenings happen, and a lot of information, downloads, channeling. And it's like, it's true, like what you say, like we come here, it's like an intensive. Like, for example,
Yeah.
I went to a college where I could study here in Florida, but it was actually in Virginia. But during certain semesters, I had to go on site
Oh
and
yeah.
be there. So it's very much similar like that. That's how they explain it to me. That's your like intensive course, right? It's
Yeah.
part of the curriculum,
Yeah.
to be on site. And that's what being here in Earth is like. It's an intensive.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So I loved how they brought that about. Now you did mention the gardens. Now, does not everybody goes to the gardens though? I've heard a lot of people's stories so far. And some go to gardens, some just go into the void, some go to other places. Did they say like why that might be, or it's just part
No,
of why?
no, they didn't tell me anything like that. It was almost like I got the feeling that Alan was showing me kind of the process that happens when people get back. They go through the tunnel, they come into the light, into the orientation center, they have the orientation, and then they get to have the reunion where all the people there that who passed before him. And it's just like when we pass, all of our loved ones, parents, relatives, aunts, uncles, friends, they all gather there to meet us. But I don't know if that is the process for everybody. I don't know if it's a linear process, like here's step one, here's step two, then you have the reunion. I don't know the order of how it all works. They didn't explain that part to me, so I don't
Mm,
know.
okay. All right. Yep. And then, so just, I don't know if you've seen my video when I talked about my experience.
I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. So, and just gonna go, I'm not gonna go through everything. You can always check that if you want to, or the audience. I'm sure those who are following have seen it. But I went from out of body into like I guess what they term is the void, the blackness. And I realized I didn't have a body. And then and I didn't know what to do. And so then this light came, and it wasn't like a tunnel, it was just a space, right? So I don't, some people say you have a tunnel, some people have like the gold cord. I didn't have any of that. So
Yeah,
that's different too. I went into the black area and then the light showed up. And within the light, there were beings. It wasn't a loved one, it wasn't a family member, anybody that I knew, but I knew that I felt it was okay, it was safe.
yeah,
So they told me to drop like my human sensory, like the vision, the view, because I didn't have the body to use those. And it was more about using telepathy, intuition, higher consciousness. And when
yeah,
I did that, I went into the light. And so from there, and it's very interesting that you talk about like very busy, right? Because when I got to into the light, there were I had experiences of people doing things and they were very busy, very busy. I didn't know really what they were doing. And I
yeah.
could see this really long hall. It was like a hall, but it wasn't a hall, right? It was really hard. It's hard to explain, but there was no end to it. And it all the way down, it was just light. But I could see
Wow.
things on both sides.
Yeah,
It's a little different than what you're talking about because I didn't see columns. So I really don't know where I was. And I don't really know anybody who's had the experience, but I know people were hovering around, they were doing things. It was like they're on hoverboards, and there
oh
was
wow.
this thing up here, and there was this thing up here, and I'm down here, and things were appearing out of nowhere. I just kind of knew everything all at once. You know, they talk
Wow.
about the 360.
Yeah,
Um, and then they took me into, I wanted to go off and go running. You know, I was like, I don't want to stay right here. I want to go and like, it was like I was getting this memory of being home, right?
yeah,
At that point. And they're like, no, you need to go in here. And they say, just wait here. And I was like,
yeah,
okay. And then a couch appeared with a coffee table, you know. They're like, go just sit here, you know, we'll be right back. And so this other, I want to say it was like one of my guides or counselors, and they came and this room appeared and we went into the room. I don't remember it being a round room, like you were saying with your
yeah.
life review, but I know it was a room. And then I was watching videos.
Really?
Yeah. So it's similar to what you were saying, but I don't
Yeah,
have as great a detail as you do. And I remember them saying before I came back, after watching the life review, you're not going to remember everything. And you're only going to
yeah,
remember what you need, and then things will come and unfold after. So I don't have as much great detail as you do. So, but that's
yeah,
amazing that you have that. So, because you're bringing in other information that a lot of us don't have. So,
yeah, yeah. I think of myself, I'm just another piece of that jigsaw puzzle. And
mm-hmm.
I love to watch NDE stories even to this day because it makes me feel like I'm right back over there again.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it does. Me too.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now, and I know you were talking about like we don't remember coming in. My guides talk about that as like the spiritual amnesia because like why come here if you can do it on the other side, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
we don't remember when we come
exactly,
here like what we're doing, why we're supposed to be doing it because say we signed up for a horrible experience and we're going to come in with the memory, we're not going to want to do that. We're going to
exactly,
be like, no,
exactly.
you
Yep,
know.
that's
So,
exactly how it works. Yep.
mhm. Yeah, so we have the spiritual amnesia, and you also talked about the life review, which I do master in. I call being spirit trained because
Yeah,
I had one on the other side and I came back and had a life review. I had actually one in an out of body. So it's a process that I do for my clients to help them with the life review, like here in life. Like we don't have
Yeah.
to wait later to do it.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I like the part where you talk about this, it's not really about the punishment because there's no
Yeah.
hell, there's no judgment. And part of that, when I did my life review on the other side, I remember like this energy of love. And I don't know if you've had this experience. I remember having the view and consciousness of love flow through me before I did the life review. So I was
Yeah.
actually seeing the life review not just from my perspective, but source's perspective at the same time.
Oh, really? That's
Do you
interesting.
remember anything along those lines? Do you remember feeling the love come in when you were doing it? It was almost like source was there doing the life review with me, but
Yeah.
also my skies were there, my counselor.
Oh, yeah. Well, with me, it was kind of different because I didn't even know that I died.
Mm,
This whole thing, as everything unfolded, he was showing me everything so quickly that I didn't even have time to think. It was like I was just absorbing everything that was happening. But I could feel afterwards, I realized that the reason I didn't want to come back here was because of that feeling of God that we all feel over there. And it was the safest, most secure feeling that I've ever experienced in my life. And I didn't understand how could I not live with that? Why would I come here? And I think the reason that we do have that spiritual amnesia is because if we remembered where we were from, everybody would be killing themselves. They wouldn't be staying around here to go through all of this stuff that every one of us has to go through. Everyone would
right.
just want to be back home again.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. And there's the other thing too, like with the whole um the records. When you were talking about the scrolls, it reminds me, and I can't remember his name, and it kind of came up when you were talking about it. There's this guy who channels information, and what he's doing is he's tapping into those scrolls and bringing in people. You can do a session with him,
Is
and
that
he'll tell
Bashar?
you.
Is
Sorry.
it is it Bashar? Does that name sound familiar?
No, not
Oh,
Bashar. I think he's out of India or somewhere. Like,
oh, okay.
yeah, he is able to tap into the scrolls and he
Wow.
writes everything down, and he gives it to you in a scroll. I think it is something like that. Yeah, I was really interested in it, and it came up when you were talking about the scrolls. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Now, for people who might be skeptics, because I want to go into this because they'll be like, oh, well, what about the anesthesia? Maybe
Yeah,
it's just an issue with the anesthesia. People, they have these experiences from it. Do you have anything that you might want to share with them about that?
sure, sure. Well, because of how I was raised, I think I am the most skeptical person that I have ever met. Even after my whole experience, I was so skeptical, especially the part about the past lifetimes, that about 2 months after my experience, I went to see a hypnotherapist. And that's what I do now. I do hypnotherapy. But back then, I had heard that people can see past lifetimes in hypnosis. So I thought, if I go see this hypnotherapist and if I can see past lifetimes, then it means that the experience that I had was real. Because I was even thinking, well, what if it was just some kind of amazing illusion or some kind of dream or hallucination of some kind? So I went to see this woman in California, and we go into the session, and Laura, sure enough, I saw three different lifetimes. And I was like, oh my gosh, it is real. It really is true. Everything that I experienced, it really did happen. There is a place we all go to when we pass. Nobody's here by accident. And God set this whole thing up that a life on earth is temporary. That's always how it's supposed to be because it's not our home. Our home is the other side. So I've always been skeptical, but after I had that validation, that's kind of when the skepticism left me and I started living just a much more spiritually oriented life and not so religionistic. And something else that your audience, I think, would appreciate, when I was standing there at the end of my NDE in that field, and Jesus was standing right there, I had the most extraordinary feeling from him that they don't care what religion we follow, as long as whatever religion we do follow brings us closer to God. They don't, because on the other side, when I was over there, I didn't see like, here's your Catholics and here's your Hindus and here's your Muslims. It wasn't, it was almost like there was no religion, there was only spirituality. So that
Mm-hmm.
was really interesting, and something too that I loved. You remember the Dalai Lama?
Yep.
He said something about religion that I just love. He said, "My religion is very simple. My religion is kindness." And I've always loved that. I've always loved that quote because it's all about spirituality, compassion, love. There's no judgment. None of the things that religion teaches us, that's not even real. God didn't even create religion. It was created by man. Mankind created religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's no religion on the other side, I found out. So
Yeah,
definitely. And I understand, wanting to have like certain faiths and religions and things and to belong to and relate to. It just helps us on our journey and helps support it. As long as it's in alignment with love.
yeah,
Other than that, it's really not helpful or useful, you know.
yeah,
But yeah, I've learned that there's no religion on the other side. There's no judgment. There's no hell. Um,
yeah,
and also too, from my understanding, Jesus isn't necessarily like our go-to, though we can follow his teachings and understand his teachings because he does share a lot of good information, just like we're sharing here.
yeah,
But he's he's more of a, I guess, spirit guide or a master versus your savior, right? I think there's a little difference in that
yeah,
perspective.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think they believe that there's only one person that has all the answers.
Hmm.
I think that they look at religion as every religion has some part of truth to it, but not any religion here on earth has all the answers.
Right. And I was like, well, I asked when that was kind of one of my channelings at one point, and I was like, well, what if we put them all together? Then will we have the whole
Yeah,
story?
yeah, yeah,
If we put everybody's story together, because we all have a piece of the puzzle, like you said. And I
yeah,
just love that. But um, I want to kind of talk about, because you talked about you seeing in your hypnosis session the
yeah,
past lives.
yeah.
Now, I know in mine, there's past lives that bleed into this lifetime. Did you see if they were a part of this lifetime? Because sometimes that they bleed into each other. The reason why we come into one life is because we haven't resolved something of the past, or we want to still work on it in this lifetime.
It's possible. The only one that I remember from when I went to see this hypnotherapist was a life that happened somewhere in Asia, and I was a farmer, and I had one of those round hats on, and I was working with rice in some kind of a field, like a rice paddy field, and there was a hut in the background, and I had a wife and I had two children, and that's what I have now in this life. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there was any kind of correlation. It was almost like it was interesting because when I saw them, it was like looking on the inside of my forehead, like watching a movie. And I could see this, but it was only an instant, like maybe 10 seconds. I could see the movie of this lifetime. But I guess I do have a little bit of an affiliation for that one life when I was a monk and taught these kids because I have always loved martial arts. I've always loved karate, and I've always liked Shaolin temples. And I would love to go actually spend time in a Shaolin temple. So I think
Wow.
if there's any life that may have influenced me in this life, it would be that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that interesting because they do kind of bleed into each other and like certain aspects of things that we're maybe working on or it's part of
Yeah.
our life path, from life to life.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of also talks into like the pre-life planning. A lot of people don't want to accept that we plan our lives,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
because
true.
it includes the not so happy times in our
Exactly.
lives,
Exactly. Yep.
So,
Those are
mm,
the things that teach us the most.
exactly. And that's how I got into my awakening and my journey is from those hard times. It didn't
Exactly.
come from being
Yeah.
in bliss,
Yeah.
otherwise I would be on the other side. There would be no reason to come in here.
That's
And
exactly it. Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now with the aging, you said around 30. Now I haven't experienced or heard about this. I know people say generally they appear as the most healthiest time in their life, which I would assume would be in people's 30s,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
But I also heard people talk about, well, my daughter was there, but she was younger, or my
Yeah.
father was there, but he was older. So people have shared experiences where they've seen them at different ages.
Yeah.
How is it? Did they share with you like why 30s?
I they didn't actually tell me that, and I wish I would have asked because so many people have asked me that, and they've asked me, well, is it because Jesus died in his 30s? And I just don't know. The only thing Alan told me was that that's how God created us. We were all created in our early 30s. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but I do know that when I was watching that gentleman when in the building that's called the orientation center come through that tunnel, he was an elderly gentleman, and when he was talking to that counselor, he aged down to be in his 30s. Well, the same idea happens when children pass, because children, they're us. They're little people that come into the earth, but they're still souls just like we are. And when they pass, they age up to be in their 30s. But I again, I don't know why, other than that's how God created us. That's all I
Mm,
really know for sure.
yeah, that's
But I do,
interesting.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
do know that people can appear differently. And I want to tell you something really interesting. I do a lot of hypnotherapy, and I help people connect with the other side and past lives. I was working with a gentleman just the other day who we go to a gazebo on the other side where they can meet their guides. And it was so interesting because when I said, let's go ahead and have your guide come in, well, almost ever for all these years I've done this kind of work, the guides always appear just like we do, just like us in our early 30s. Well, the child showed up in this gazebo, and I had never experienced that before because I know that we don't have children as guides. So I asked him, I said, what is this experience teaching you? And he told me that this child was asking him, do you want to play? Do you want to play? And he told me it's because I take everything here on earth too seriously. They want me to be more like a child, to have fun, to be in the moment and not think so much about the future. And I thought that was extraordinary that that's how we actually got that message from a child.
Hmm.
I do you want to play? Do you want to play?
Yeah.
I thought that was just so neat.
Yeah. I love how they show up, how we need them to show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
From the point of being here on Earth to like our transition to the other side when they come to meet us, whoever's meant to meet us. Because sometimes
Yeah.
people of different faiths will be like, well, Jesus showed up. I don't believe in Jesus. Some people will
Yeah.
say,
I
somebody
saw the
their
Buddha.
friend and it wasn't their
Yeah.
family. Like in my case, it was just three beings. Like it's all very different and based on what we need. So I
Yeah.
love that.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Um, Now with the like our bodies and this too, and I love that we can some people have said they've seen bodies on the other side, but
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that it's a physical form because if we can change and transform from one younger to older, I would say it's more of it's not a static version of us in a body. It's more of a lucid body where we can transition from different ages, right? Because how do you go from being a child into an adult,
Yeah,
if you have a physical body like we have here?
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
interesting that they talk about they have the appearance of a body. And I know, okay, so I have had a couple experiences after the near death experience where I actually went into like this orb of light. So I was a light and
yeah,
I necessarily didn't have a body, but in my out of body experience, I got up out of my body and walked away. Looking back at my body, I knew I had it was like more of a light body. It wasn't a physical, dense body. Like
yeah.
there's different layers of body and things that we can portray.
Here's what I noticed because I've always wondered about that too. In the first time that I saw people was in that building with the big dome on top where we go to plan a lifetime. And there was that window on the left, and that's where I saw everybody. Everybody actually, they look just like we do. And what's interesting is that the bodies over there, that's how we think of as reality. That's our real body. Here on Earth, these bodies get sick, they age, they get older, they get broken bones, diseases. Well, over there, the bodies are perfect. They don't get hurt, they don't break, you can't be tired, you don't get diseases, you don't die. And the only thing that I could think of is it's like highly concentrated energy that becomes form because the bodies over there are much better than our bodies here.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah,
don't know how to explain that. It's only that that's just what I saw.
right.
So it's a
Yeah.
great question. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, because I've had a couple different experiences and I'm trying to wrap my mind around it, myself and understanding it. And when I was on the other side, the beings that were there, they had a certain form, but it was so much light that
Yeah,
like I couldn't see like a dense physical body. So it's more like a light body. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? You
yeah,
just knew they had that form and shape, that they were not like an alien looking being, like they say the reptilians or the grays.
yeah, yeah,
They did kind of look like us from that perspective, just the appearance, but it was very much like translucent, not necessarily like dense physical
yeah,
body,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's just really interesting to wrap your head around. And then, like I said, I had an out of body experience where I went into just a white light, orb,
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's a whole different type of transformation right there. Like
yep,
it's just really interesting to kind of look at.
yeah.
Um,
Very much so.
yeah. Now also when you say that we had been given gifts, are you talking about our intuitive gifts or what kind of gifts were you
Yeah,
talking?
spiritual gifts. Like some people were given the gift of mathematics or math. Other people were given the gift of writing. Some people were given the gift of singing or dancing or just any number of things. And I've always thought it was so interesting because if you ever go talk to a 10-year-old child and you ask that child, what do you want to be when you grow up? They always know. They always have an idea of what they want to accomplish. And I think that comes from the other side, that they all come here for a reason. And I know that we have more than one gift. God gave all of us different gifts that we have for eternity. And that tends to be the kind of things that we like to do on the other side. Like those people that were in the orientation center, their gift was counseling, the love of people. The gentleman that was behind me in the planetarium, he was given the gift about astronomy and stars and space. And that girl who was in the castle, her gift was about she loved history. And you tend to do the things that you love to do on the other side.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were talking about the castle, was it was like Spirit was saying that's like a museum.
Yeah,
There,
exactly.
it's a
Yeah.
museum of history that we can
Yes.
go into.
That's a perfect thing. That's a perfect way to describe it. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they were saying to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, because like
Yeah.
they come in, they help with when I'm doing these
Oh, good. Yeah,
conversations.
I've never thought of it like that, but that's true. That's exactly what it was like.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like the curator of the museum.
Mm-hmm.
That's what her role was.
Yeah, yeah. So that's cool. Yeah, and like the recording, everything is recorded.
Yeah.
That's unique. And they remind me of have the scenario of like the cloud, right? We have the cloud here,
Yeah.
right? So everything, and they share that experience. So I have something relatable to what it's like.
Yeah.
And so they say it's like the cloud, right? All the information is stored of everything. Even we're being recorded right now. So we
Yeah.
can actually look back on, at
Exactly.
another time, or anybody can view this at any time
Yep.
they want
Exactly.
to tune into what's going on here,
Yep. Exactly.
and be a part of it.
Yeah.
So it's not just going to be on YouTube, it's going to be in the universe.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Um, now, having had your experience and having had maybe, a religious background, how do you now see Source, God, Jesus?
The way I see it now is it's just absolute pure love. When I was standing in that field across from Jesus, it was the most extraordinary feeling of compassion that I've ever felt because he knows what we all go through. He was here. He was murdered. He was crucified. He knows everything that we all go through here on earth. And he just has the absolute unamazing compassion and love for us. And it was so different than religion. Religion talks more about doctrine and the religiosity of things and following rules, and you've got to follow all these different laws and rules about spirituality. And it was more like it's really so much more simple than that. It's just about love, caring for people, loving other people, trying to make a difference with your life. There's a great quote that I love from Denzel Washington, the actor. He said, "Don't strive to make a living, strive to make a difference." And that's the kind of thing that's important on the other side. Because God's never going to ask any of us when we die, how much money did you make? How big was your 401k? How big was your house? I mean, those things, they don't even matter on the other side. That's why it's like so backward here on earth, because we're all raised to believe that success is based on what you get. And there's nothing wrong with having money. We all have to have money, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so many people chase it like that's what defines them as a success. Whereas the other side looks at just the fact that you came to a place like Earth when so many don't want to come here, you've already been successful. You're already a success just for showing up. That's a huge thing that none of
Yeah,
us really know when we're here.
yeah, yeah. And they say like just deciding to come here is being at service, just being
Mhm.
here, you know. So we are just in service just by being here and choosing to come, because you
Exactly.
make a big difference, not just in our lives, but in the lives of others. And it's just very simple how we can do that. Like, and a lot of people talk about it, you just open a door for somebody, smile, say you're happy,
Yeah.
something positive
Yeah.
for somebody. So
Exactly.
we're just being at service by being here and bringing our
Yep.
energy in.
Exactly.
I do want to kind of add because something came when you were talking about, how Jesus was murdered, right? And the thought that they put in my head was, well, he signed up for that.
That's probably true. Yep. Because we all have to leave somehow
Hmm.
because this isn't our home. And that's something that I always wish I would have asked my guide, because the way that we leave, that's everybody has to have a way to leave here. Either leave from old age, or you have a disease, or there's some kind of an accident. And I know from looking at those charts that I saw, all the things, the major events of our lifetime is planned ahead of time. And I have to believe that we also plan how we're going to pass. But I don't understand how that works. Like, I'll give you an example. One of the one of the ways that most of us leave is from something like cancer. So what I don't understand is, if you want to live a life to be, let's say, 85 years old, and you want to pass from cancer, well, cancer doesn't know that that's when it's supposed to start, when you're age 85. So I don't understand how all that how that comes together. Like my wife's friend, her name was Julie, and she was her best friend all her life. And Julie always told my wife and told her mother that she's not supposed to be here past age 18. And they would always tell her, don't be ridiculous. Of course you're going to be here past 18. And she said, Mom, I'm not supposed to be here past age 18. Well, shortly after her 18th birthday, I think it was just a couple of months after her 18th birthday, she was killed in a car crash. So how does that come about? Cars don't think to themselves, okay, we need to have a car accident so this person can cross at this time. There's a reason for them to go at this time. But I don't know what process makes that happen. I understand like a natural cause, because God designed these bodies to only be temporary. They're not permanent because this isn't our home. So I understand passing from old age, but how does cancer work, or any other kind of disease? How does diabetes, I mean, how does it know when we're supposed to cross? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Well,
I've never understood that.
I know from my own experience that I am guided to go to certain places and do certain things. And so I follow
Yeah.
that. And though we do have free will and choice, so say an accident, right? An accident. Somebody gets into a car accident. Somebody might just get the inkling to go get ice cream or go get
Yeah.
something at the store, at a specific certain time, right?
Yeah.
And so it's almost like these synchronicities that line up for certain things. So I guess if you apply that to those scenarios,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Is a person congested, taking in, are they smoking? Are they in bad behavior? Are they drinking? Or whatever
Yeah.
the case may be, that's going to help contribute to that, because we all, I know on a physical level, like we have certain things from generations that's being passed down through the body. Like your great grandmother might have had cancer,
Yeah.
right? And if you're going to trigger them in your life, whatever created that,
Yeah.
it can spark that within you,
Yeah. Yeah. That, I think that's how it works. Yeah.
you know. So I mean, there are ways, and I can see it, and it's just from my experience where how I can kind of look at it from that perspective. But yeah, it makes sense. And I would have never thought that from that way unless they put that into my mind.
Yeah.
He signed up for that. I would never thought about it like
I wouldn't have
that.
either. Yeah. I wouldn't have either.
So, yeah. So awesome. Um, Now, was there anything else that maybe you wanted to share before we bring it to a close?
Yeah. The one thing I would like to tell your listeners is the importance of never giving up. I know that all of us will go through storms in our lifetimes. We all have our Mount Everest moments. And what I want to tell people is that it's absolutely vital that you don't quit, you don't give up, because you have no idea how many people are rooting for you on the other side. There are so many people that want to see us succeed, and success only means to accomplish what you came here to accomplish. And I think there are two primary reasons why we're here. The first one is to learn, to grow, and to develop. And the second one is to help other people on their journey. And I know there are dark times, but it's just so vital that you never give up, you never quit, because everybody's here for a reason. All of our lives intertwine with each other, and we all learn from each other. And people always feel like they're alone here, but they're never alone. God is with us all the time. Our guides are with us all the time. Plus, all the people on the other side are rooting for us. Nobody's ever alone. So I would say just never give up, keep fighting. And when you finish this lifetime, when your time comes and you get to go home, you'll be so proud of the life that you lived because you never quit, you never gave up, you just kept fighting through it all. And you'll be so happy when you finish.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you for that message for a lot of
Oh, you're
people.
welcome. Well, Laura, it
Hopefully
was
that
so
helps.
nice to meet you.
You too as well. Is there a place that people can book a session with you? You do
Oh,
the
yeah,
hypnosis?
they can go to my website. It's johnjdavisnde.com. And
Beautiful.
if they have any questions, I write back to everybody. They can email me, and that is johnjdavis65 at icloud.com.
Thank you. Great having you on the show.
Thanks so much, Laura. Have a great weekend.
You too as well.
All right, thank you.